The Selma to Montgomery marches were 3 marches that were part of the Selma voting rights movement. Activists organized 3 protest marches to walk the 54-mile highway in Alabama from Selma to the state capital of Montgomery. They wanted to show that they were eager to participate in their right to vote. Even after the passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, segregationist groups didn't want blacks to vote. Numerous activist groups were encouraging blacks to register to vote. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the Dallas County Voters League, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and even Martin Luther King Jr. himself came to Selma to be a part of the protests beginning in January 1965. 3,000 people were arrested by the end of February. Tensions began to intensify when activist Jimmy Lee Jackson was shot and killed during a peaceful protest march on February 26th. It was then that a man named James Bevel from the Southern Christian Leadership Conference began organizing marches from Selma to Montgomery. The first march took place on March 7, 1965. It became known as Bloody Sunday because while the 600 protesters crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge, state troopers and county posse attacked the unarmed marchers with billy clubs and tear gas. The second march took place 2 days later, and Martin Luther King Jr. ended up leading the group of protesters to a church instead of continuing on, so they could seek federal protection to protest peacefully. That night, a white group beat and murdered civil rights activist James Reeb, a white minister from Boston who had come to Selma to join the marches. The death of Reeb caused a national outcry and put a spotlight on the civil disobedience in Alabama. Protesters demanded President Lyndon Johnson pass new federal voting rights that would allow blacks to vote without being harassed. President Johnson passed the bill on March 15th and then pledged federal protection for the protesters as they marched. On March 21st, 25,000 people, both black and white, began the march to Montgomery. There were 2,000 Army soldiers, 1,900 members of the Alabama National Guard, and many FBI agents and federal marshals marching along with them. They arrived at the Alabama state capitol on March 25th. Their example and steadfastness showed Alabama and the entire United States that they were ready to exercise their right to vote.